Welcome back to Tech Ops. Today we got a cool episode. We got Binkov from Binkov's Battlegrounds.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's on the line with us now. Binkov, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here in your show.
Yeah, and you've been making videos. You're probably one of the oldest ones. I know you started before I did too.
We started, I think it was summer of 2016, but I'm not sure we're the oldest channel like that. I'm pretty sure there were other military themed channels.
I feel like there's so many of them now, There's the operations room, Peru.
In the last year or two, there have been many new ones, sure, especially since, situation in Ukraine and the war and everything. I think there were a lot of like history military channels, not perhaps focused on modern day. Couple of those, I don't know, maybe they went offline, like Bass Battles, which I liked. But I think we're going strong as a community, so that's good.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see new people do good too, and you might get jealous a little bit sometimes when you see one of our competitors get 1 million views, and we want to get the 1 million views, but you're still happy for them. You want them to do good.
Maybe it's just YouTube algorithm which favors somebody new at the start, possibly, I don't know, and then it's all gonna level out later.
Yeah, who knows the YouTube algorithm? There can be anything at this point, and it changes almost. It seems like it changes on a weekly basis because we've had talks with YouTube, and they don't tell us anything. We've had like direct talks with them. They're still not telling us anything.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But Binkov, so you're mentioning a lot of people with the war in Ukraine, new content creators. So how do you think YouTube has changed for the way you make videos ever since the war started? Do you feel like you're ever, because I know with me, sometimes I wonder if I'm making too many Ukraine videos. Is it okay to step out and do other stuff? Do you feel kind of constrained to that?
Yeah, actually, you described it pretty good. Like we have a feeling that the audience is, looking for these kind of topics. They want us to do Ukraine themed videos. So, and of course, you see that they do well view-wise, but at the same time, you also want to go on and do stuff that you did before the war started. So we will, keep making videos and other topics too. I don't know. I think it's like 50-50 right now, like Ukraine topics and other topics, and we're a bit behind on our like time travel videos, which we did like, I don't know, maybe 10. I mean, just several, but we really love those, and we're actually prepping another one to come out soon. Well, I don't know. I mean, this war is probably gonna last for some time still, so I don't see that changing. I think most creators will still, focus on Ukraine a lot.
Obviously, making predictions is impossible. What, if any, predictions do you have for Ukraine? Do you think it's going to go a certain way? I mean, it seems like Ukraine is getting a lot more high-tech weaponry from NATO and the West, but Russia has the manpower. I mean, their country is several times more population, and they can just keep throwing more people at it and mobilize a few more times. So what do you think? Any predictions or any kind of feeling?
Well, Russia has the population advantage in theory, but in practice, we haven't seen that. I mean, Ukraine has more troops on the ground inside Ukraine. But of course, that may change over time. So it's really hard to predict. I mean, we've been trying not to be, very clear with our predictions in our videos because it's really, really hard to predict anything really. I know that's not the most interesting answer, but I think it's just the way it is because you cannot know when Russia is going to escalate or when Ukraine is going to get more support, or what if Ukraine starts getting less support from the West. Those are all huge, huge factors which can influence the war. So I do think it's going to last a long time. I don't think the war is going to end within just a few months. That's the problem.
Yeah, and one of the things I've always loved about y'all's videos is when you do like a versus video, it's always no nukes, no allies. And with Ukraine, they don't necessarily have nukes, but they have allies, and that seems to vary. To just kind of like it varies and throws so many variables in because now they're getting new tanks and now they're getting these new things that we didn't know they were going to be getting. So I think it's really interesting to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of, aid, it changes a lot. I mean, back in like a year ago, like when the US said it would, like, even before the war started, I think the US said they would know they would not establish a no-fly zone. So that was like a signal, okay, they might not be, willing to help as much. The war started, and then at first it was just, no tanks, no vehicles, just ATGMs and whatnot. And then obviously that changed over time. So you can't really draw a line. Who knows what kind of aid is going to be sent? I think it all depends on the situation on the ground, which seems static right now. But as Russia is adding more people, and I'm thinking, they're probably revving up their industrial potential. Even though Russia performed pretty poorly initially, I'm not sure they're not a threat anymore.
Yeah. So hypothetically, and I might throw you for a loop here, what do you think Russia could do to improve their situation in the war? Is there anything you could identify? And then same thing with Ukraine. Is there anything you think that Ukraine could or should be doing that might help them out in the war?
Well, with Russia, they do lack numbers, like in personnel, and they seem to be addressing that to some extent. Like they haven't sent like all those the reservists right away, but they do seem to be training them for a long time now. So they're probably gonna have a half decent force, and they might be mobilizing even more people, because who who really knows how many they're gonna, I don't know, maybe it's not just about the reservists. Maybe they're increasing salaries. I mean, they've announced a 50% increase in contract soldiers for the 2023 or something like that. So they're probably investing a lot of money into their war machine. Up to extent you can buy some results with, just throwing money at the problem. They're probably gonna get stronger and stronger from, I mean, compared to where they were like a couple of months ago when they lost Kherson and all that territory east of Kharkiv.
Yeah, it's hard to even really get a good idea for manpower at the front. Like you said, yeah, probably back in September, October, when Kharkiv and Kherson and all that started falling to Ukrainian counteroffenses, they were probably understaffed. And now, yeah, no one's very clear. I mean, it's very secretive, Ukraine's manpower. So they don't know if they have enough to continually staff the front line and rotate them out and have reserves and everything in the event Russia makes another big push.
Yeah. And it's not in their interest to disclose such information. I mean, even if, allies know that, which they probably do, they're still not gonna, tell it to the media. So I don't know what's the situation. Ukraine does seem to be mobilizing more people. Do they have like over 1 million troops right now? Who knows, really? It's just one big black box.
Yeah, because like if you look at Russia, they, especially when you stepping out of the Soviet Union, they spent so much of their assets and their resources on their navy, and this has nothing to do with the war. So now they're kind of, I feel like what they're trying to do is kind of step back and say, hey, look, we're going back into a ground war, even though we spent all this money on kind of like scary weapons, right? Submarines and SSGNs and the Poseidon.
I think they are gonna keep investing in nuclear potential. But as far as the rest of the navy goes, like regular SSNs and destroyers, frigates, and whatnot, that's pretty much the last thing on their list right now. I think. I mean, it was near the bottom even like for last few decades. I mean, ever since the end of the Cold War, the navy was on the back burner for Russia. But at the same time, the U.S. is in a completely different situation.
Yeah, the U.S. would go out there with their aircraft carriers and go right up to Russia and strike, whereas their navy was somewhat more of a defensive one to try to stop those carriers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even in Soviet time, the navy was defensive. So this is just remnants of Soviet Navy with a couple of new ships. That's what they were, they've been doing for the last, 30 years.
Has there been anything that surprised you about this war that you didn't see coming? That different things that played out differently than you thought they might have?
Well, I guess the initial plan is most surprising because it was not even a thought out offensive. It was just like, okay, let's go in, let's assume nobody's gonna really intervene, and let's get the government and change the government. And for a real offensive take, even half of Ukraine, Russia would probably need like 2 or 3 times as big forces. So they did not expect to meet this much opposition. Their air force performed abysmally, I think, when it comes to ground strikes, both near the front line and especially further back, like on strategic targets. I believe they just simply lack the information gathering systems compared to US. It's not even like a couple of times worse. It's like a couple of a magnitude worse than US.
So when we talk about the future of warfare, yeah, all the way up till before this war started, a lot of people talked about, fifth generation stealth fighters, the ultimate hypersonic weapons, sixth generation fighters. And they get progressively more and more expensive. I mean, sixth generation might end up costing $200 million each. But it seems like this war kind of brought it back. A lot of people, including probably the US, that you still need artillery. You still need cheap stuff that you can keep supplying in large numbers.
Yeah, drones are cool as fuck, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's the other thing, like low tech stuff, like quadcopters seem to have played a huge role along the front lines in trench warfare and all that. So what do you kind of see as the future? Do you think it's going to kind of go more, keep going to that high tech route, or kind of go back to the old days of, we need millions of artillery shells, we need thousands of tanks or whatever?
Well, it's gonna be middle ground, but I think they will try to go in both direction at once. I think the US is gonna really double down on high tech stuff like sixth generation jets for the Pacific theater. But at the same time, as we see in the announcements concerning Ukraine, they realize their artillery stocks are insufficient. So they're like, I think that they said they're gonna ramp up artillery around production by like factor of 3 or 4 or something like that. And also cheap drones like Switchblade and stuff in that category. I think those drones will probably proliferate most, like much more than Bayraktar sized drones, because like Bayraktar for all it did in the beginning, like as the war went on, there was much less said about it, and Ukraine probably doesn't have that many left. I mean, so because it's basically just a plane without either without much sensors, and it's not that hard to bring down if it's close to the front line. So if you're gonna put a missile on it, and then you have to be close to the front line, it's gonna get shut down sooner or later. So it's probably quite useful if you can stay 50 kilometers behind the front line and look at something with its with its cameras. But as a direct attack weapon, it's perhaps less cost efficient than these small kind of drones like Russia uses from Iran and stuff like that.
Like the DJI Mavic and these other little.
Oh yeah, but even the Shahad.
Oh well, yeah, those are even. I didn't even mean those, but those are special category. Those are like super cheap stuff.
Super cheap. I mean, I bought an Inspire 1 for $1,000, and I could put a grenade on it if I wanted to. I mean, it's they're like so cheap.
Yeah, but they only have short range though. I think it's interesting too, like with the Bayraktar, there's been really no footage, maybe 1 or 2 clips come out since the beginning of the war. It was in the beginning of the war where all that came out, and it seems like probably, we don't know for sure, but most likely the reason why it did so well in the beginning of the war was like Binkov was talking about, Russia just kind of ran in full speed, didn't expect much, so they might not have properly set up air defenses and stuff to try to spot anything in the air and shoot it down. So Bayraktar almost more got lucky than is actually good.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, there were a couple of theories going on from that which you said that they didn't really set up their air defenses, to the fact that they have not been using their electronic jamming in the beginning because they simply, like Russia, did not have experience using jamming on such a battlefield level where they would have multiple units emitting and basically jamming each other. And then one of the theories is that they simply stopped using the jammers initially because they would jam each other, they would jam their own systems. So maybe over time they got better at it. They did not have any operational experience of that kind of huge formations going from many directions.
Yeah, and that's the most important part about warfare too, is learning to adapt, right? Warfare is always going to change. The situation on the battlefield will always change. It's whoever can adapt and to the new situation and the new circumstances that ends up winning.
That's why all the Ukrainian troops, I think, as they gain experience, hopefully they're rotated on the front lines and they get to rest, and then they get to live and learn. So they will get better and better as they get more experience.
And I think it's interesting because you're talking about not having air defenses set up, but we just had a balloon float over the U.S. for like 4 days.
Oh yeah, everyone went wild here.
We didn't understand what the hell's going on, but yeah, I mean, there's a spy balloon floating over us, and we just let it.
I don't know why they did not shoot it down before it got to continental US. I mean, I assume they detected it earlier, but I don't know.
So maybe they didn't have anything in position that far north to try to shoot it down. It came over Alaska, then kind of went down the western coast of Canada, and then into Montana. You don't want to shoot it down.
Well, but the U.S. has always been big on the north side, always being defensive, right? That's the whole, like we're always going to be fighting Russia, right? So Alaska's got a lot of defenses. They've got a lot of radar defenses. They got like all these missile defenses.
Yeah, I would think they have had to notice it at least over Alaska. So maybe it was not deemed to be a threat that early. I don't know. I mean, I've recently read that the U.S. Department said like similar balloons flew, like three such balloons flew in the previous administration, and one more flew at the beginning of Biden administration, and nothing was really mentioned of those in the media. So
yeah, this one seems like they talked about it because I think the media found it.
Right.
That's really why. So they couldn't not talk about it. Like the one you're talking about that went over Texas. I think there was another one that went over Hawaii. The media didn't talk about it, so the DoD didn't feel like they needed to talk about it.
So I don't know. Maybe, I mean, when you say it like that, it's like, was the DoD pressured into taking an action?
Could be. Yeah.
I mean, we're in a UFO craze right now with all this like UFO information that's coming out. So when you throw a balloon out there, people are like, "Well, it's not a UFO, but we can see it." Like it's right there. We can. They actually have video of it getting shot down over Myrtle Beach. Like it's kind of the new UFO.
Usually it's either a weather balloon or swamp gas. So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That describes every single case.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what do you think? So China said it was just a civilian research balloon. Do you think that's true? Obviously, we don't know for sure, but just speculating. Do you think that it could be a civilian one?
It's possible, but I don't think it's. We will know until they fish it out of the sea, and then they will probably, be able to figure out who made those, components, and then they will probably know who sent it.
I was joking around saying that it's going to be all American off the shelf equipment.
Well, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, that might have been true. But I think China did move quite a way in that regard in the last 10 or 15 years.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked to, who was it, the Fighter Pilot podcast guy? Vincent Aiello?
Vincent Aiello, yeah.
Yeah, and he was a fighter pilot in the Navy, U.S. Navy, back in, early 2000s?
Well, he was a Top Gun instructor, too.
That's right, yeah. And his description of China, he's like, back in my day, it was kind of like, oh, look, how cute.
Yeah.
Now it's, beginning to be able to rival the U.S., at least in the Western Pacific.
Yeah.
Well, it's all a matter of, just throwing a bunch of money at the problem and having the whole system behind you, like the population of China producing so many, engineers and scientists, and after a few decades, you're gonna get there, wherever you want to get. So
Yeah, I always thought it was weird thinking about engineers and scientists as an asset or even a liability in some cases. So, like after World War II, when the Germans lost, the one big thing was Operation Paperclip, where the U.S. came in and tried to grab all the German engineers and all their scientists as quickly as possible. Or even after the Soviet Union collapsed, again they tried to go in there and I know they subsidized the Russian space program. That way they kept these scientists, in a job. That way they didn't go work for some terrorist organization or something. It's kind of weird to think about them as an asset, like a physical asset or a liability.
well, I'm not sure. It's not weird to me at all. It's like people and their skill set. There are, I mean, those are an asset for pretty much everything, from the situation on the battlefield to like military industrial complex to everything.
I mean, yeah, people got to feed their kids, right? I mean, and if you know how to make hydrazine, I'm gonna feed my kids making hydrazine. I mean, like I don't know, like I'm a chemist or I'm a rocket scientist. I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
So, Binkov, if we can ask you, I guess, a little bit about you. So, how did you get started? What kind of got you interested in military topics and then eventually making videos on them?
When you like military history, and then you read a lot about wars, and then you inevitably technology is a part of the war, and then you start reading up on that, and you played those kind of games like strategy games, and you basically get raised in that
Tom
in
Clancy
that
family.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tom Clancy, I did like one book of his,
Which one?
uh, the Red Storm Rising.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
that's
there we
my
go.
favorite too. Yeah.
I mean, it has a lot of unrealistic stuff. Yeah, sure, but it talks about World War III in a way which I don't think back then there were any books like that written. I'm sure since then there are a lot of books have been written like concerning World War III, but back then it was the only thing, and it was pretty darn cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just the way he
Uh,
kind of role played it. So our old podcast we had on Larry Bond, who made Harpoon, and
that's great.
then he's the
Yeah.
guy who actually played him and Tom Clancy sat down and played Harpoon to simulate the wars, like in the Atlantic and for Keflavik and Red Storm Rising and all that. And they did it kind of based off his game.
Yeah, that's cool. I played Harpoon a little bit, but it's quite time consuming.
Oh yeah.
So I haven't been playing a lot of games for a few years now, probably because, of the channel in part, because you just have a limited amount of time on your hands, so you can't do everything.
Yeah. Speaking of that, who? So I understand it's a team of you guys over at Binkov.
Yeah, there's three of us, and basically how it all started, we were just probably having a beer one day and talking about like YouTube channels in general, and there were like other military channels, and then we said, this is not good. This is like just basic stuff. I mean, we know we could make a much better video than this. So then we did that. We just slowly made, I think, 3 videos before we started the channel. It was not even a job back then. It was like a hobby. You would make one video every, I don't know, 6 weeks or something like that. And I think just 3 or 4 months, one of the videos, just started accumulating views, and it started from there. If that miraculously did not, succeed at attracting people's attention, then we probably would not have kept on for more than a couple of months.
Was that the Attack on Aegis one? I remember that was my first video of yours I watched.
No, the one that exploded in views first was US versus China.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think the Attack on Aegis one, I feel like that kind of inspired me too, the way I made videos after that. Just like how the way you logically lay out each side and make it almost like a game. Like one has a turn and the other one responds, and you go back and forth.
Yeah, that I guess that one has a little bit of inspiration coming from Harpoon games. He just was successful from the moment it went live, I think.
It's refreshing to remove the variables. No nukes, no allies. and you just put these few variables together and fight each other and see what happens. And it's not necessarily realistic. It's interesting.
No, it's not realistic. It's not realistic at all when you know, talk about geopolitics. But we needed that because otherwise, pretty much every single video would, you know, end up the same way. You know, allies would join in, and in the end, it would be West versus East. You know, Russia versus U.S., China versus U.S. It would always escalate logically. Or even if it does remain like small scale, it would still be a proxy war, and you'd have like bunch of weapons come in and other support. So it would not be about the potential of those two particular countries. And the second part of the reason why we even did so many those of such videos is because it's not even about those two countries. It's about the process. It's about trying to share our knowledge of how warfare and how various systems work through such scenarios.
Yeah, because that's what we try to do too. Is like when we talk about various systems, we try to talk about, like, you know, as boring as it is, maintenance, or as boring as it is,
Logistics,
budget, you know, logistics, and
Yeah.
but that's what seems to make or break
Oh yeah.
the system. It's just maintenance, logistics, just the background things that you don't really think about.
Yeah, not very sexy.
Yeah, it's not. We always fear that's not like interesting at all. But still, even videos that are really heavy on, you know, all that stuff like logistics and budgeting, they still do okay when it comes to views. So I hope people, you know, appreciate them. We try to make a couple of, you know, more sexy videos, a couple of these, as you say, less sexy videos, and try to mix it up.
All right, so I got to ask you the big question. What's the story behind the sock puppet?
Yeah, well, I think it was at that very same evening when I talked about three of us having beers, and then we said, "Oh, we could make a YouTube channel. What is going to be called?" We didn't have a name for the channel back then. We right away said that we needed a mascot because, you know, none of us were not really actors. We're not really good in front of cameras, so we wanted the mascot. And then we said, "Okay, we need something weird that people are gonna pick up on." And then I think one of the ideas was a balloon, like balloon with eyes and stuff like that, to be a presenter. But then the idea, which one was to just have a like a sock puppet of an undefined animal. Let's leave it at that because a lot of people say Binkov is a frog or something else, but it's undefined.
But yeah, it's a good gimmick. It makes everyone knows instantly that's you.
Oh yeah,
You're
instantly.
very obviously.
Yeah.
Everyone knows right away that's Binkov. Like that's his thing. Most other channels, including
Yeah.
mine, I don't have any.
We don't have a
I
mascot.
don't have any.
Let's get a mascot. We need a mascot. Dang it.
Well, I do think having an actual person is better than having a mascot. Like what Chris Cappy is doing with Task and Purpose, I think that's really the way to go if you want to be a a new YouTuber. But also Perun, who doesn't show his face, he's doing gangbusters, so who knows?
But it's boring. Like, I mean, you can show your face, but if you don't show your face, I feel like you guys pulled it off.
Yeah, we tried going some, you know, down some middle road, and I think it's working out. I mean, sure, we're not as successful as some of other channels, but we're pretty successful, I think.
You're not in the billions, but I mean, when I first got on YouTube, um, you know, as a veteran, I got online and started looking at military stuff, and I came across Greg's channel, and then happened to just randomly meet him on Discord, and luckily we've kind of worked this out ever since. But at the same time, when I was on YouTube watching Greg, I was watching Binkov. I mean, like, I love you have such a unique channel with animations, and it's not like regardless of the sock puppet, you have some of the best animations and some of the best, I guess verses is the best way to put it. I'm not sure, but like a comparison videos of this, against this if this happens.
Well, thank you for your kind words. We do try. I mean, we invest a lot of time into research and presentation. So it's really a like whole, you know, process, like whole production pipeline, which takes I don't know, like 50 hours if you add all the research and writing and whatnot on top of the video production.
There's a lot of people out there that can put time into research and put time into production, but you guys seem to genuinely enjoy the subject, and you put out content
Yeah,
that
definitely.
seems to be like actually like you want to do this, and like there's a bunch of other YouTube channels. I'm not going to call them out by name, but those people don't know anything about the military. They don't know anything about this, and they don't dedicate themselves to the subject. They're just trying to shoot for the wind, I guess.
Yeah.
And they put out videos, and they have a lot of views. But I feel like you guys really dedicate yourselves to making the content not only enjoyable to watch, but it's accurate. Like Greg and I have conversations about your channel and your videos, and we don't find anything wrong with it.
Well, I'm sure there are errors, but we do try not to make them. We do try to research stuff. You do that too. I mean, the series of videos on Russian tanks that you did and artillery shells. I think that's good work.
And those are fun too. I don't know if you feel this way, but especially in the beginning for me, sometimes you see other people making videos and they do good. So you might try to copy their idea. You see that top 10, submarines or whatever is popular. So sometimes there were a few times where I tried to make a video that I thought was popular. And every time I did that, it always failed. The ones that did good were like the ones that I was seriously interested in myself, that I was reading for fun, before I went to bed or right away in the morning and just doing research on it. And when you are really interested and enthusiastic about a topic, I feel like that really shows. And then also does really good in views too.
Yeah, that's our experience too. I mean, we sometimes try like to break out of the kinda break out of the pure military context. Like we did one video like Millennium Falcon from Star Wars versus F-16.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we did one video with like the dragon from the Game of Thrones versus a triplane from World War One. And those did terrible. I mean, especially this latter one, it just did horribly. You probably can't move out of what you're good at and what YouTube knows you're good at, which is also a bit sad, because even though it's of course a dragon is a just fantastical creature, like a fantasy creature, we did try to use all the resources like citations from the book and moments from like shots from the TV show to try to actually measure it and try to discern its speed and whatnot, and then try to guess how it would really do versus a plane. And it was a fun video to make, but sadly it did not reach a broader audience.
Yeah, that's sad. I've actually wanted to do one for Wakanda versus Talokan, like with the new Marvel movies, but
Yeah, we did not dare to go to in the Marvel territory.
But yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Again, Binkov, thanks so much for joining us. I hope we talk more often. It's always good hearing from other people. And
Well, thank you for having me here.
yeah, we chatted for a while before about demonetization and all our experience on YouTube, all that fun stuff. So it was good talking to you.
It was nice meeting both of you, and I wish you luck, and hopefully we talk again.
yeah, definitely. We're going to have you on more than once. I trust you. We're going to have a lot of fun in the future.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Maybe talk about the China balloon a little bit, like what you might think it might be doing.
Well, it's not doing anything.
It's not doing anything anymore, yeah.